Morning, boys and girls. It's great to see you this morning. Hope you're doing well. Hope you had a great weekend. It was sunny and beautiful out, and I hope you and your family took great advantage of that. This week is Earth Week. I didn't know if you were aware of that or not, but it is. And on Tuesday, our nation celebrates Earth Day. And that's a time when we stop and think about how can we take care of Mother Earth, because it's the only Earth we're ever going to get. And if we don't take care of it, we may lose some of our natural resources, and we may have difficulty being able to recycle items, and we may have difficulty finding places to put our trash. So it's really important that we stop and think before we throw our items away as to where to put them and what we can do with them. This week in reading, I'm going to be sharing a whole bunch of books that relate about Earth Day and our Mother Earth. And this morning, I'm going to give you a purpose. I'm going to give you a purpose for reading. And this morning, we're going to be talking about the author's purpose. And when authors write stories, and we've talked about this even in writing, they write for different audiences, and they write for different reasons. And if you look at my chart, it says persuade, inform, and entertain. And if you look closely, the red letters spell pie, and Mrs. Boffman really likes to eat pie. Do you have a favorite pie? One of my favorites is cherry pie. So that's a fun way to think about author's purpose, is that it does spell out pie. Persuade means that the author is trying to get you to think of a certain way or to do something. These would be, your flyers that you get in the mail. You might get ads and even commercials. The author's purpose is to persuade us to buy a different something that they're trying to sell. Inform. The author is giving the reader facts or information about a given topic, and the text is often nonfiction. These could be encyclopedias, science and social studies textbooks, biographies, and autobiographies. True facts. And inform means true facts. And entertain is one of the things that we really enjoy in second grade. A good story is to entertain us. And that's when the author is telling us a fictional story and it's fun. And there might be mysteries or fairy tales or fables. They might make us laugh, they might make us cry, but it's a good old-fashioned fiction story. Okay, so while I'm reading today, I want you to be thinking about what is the author's purpose, and her name is Lynn Cherry, for the book that's called A River Ran Wild. This book is also a book that's going to make you stop and think about how humans affect our earth, and how changes and things that we do to the earth can affect us all ultimately. And so as we read today, I want you to be thinking about what is the author's purpose, because that is something you're going to be responding to today. So I hope you enjoy the story. There are some beautiful pictures here, and so if you get a chance, when we get a chance to get back to the library, or if you get any books online, you might want to check this one out, because there are some great illustrations in this book. And I want you to look carefully at the illustrations as I read, because they do some dramatic changing. Long ago, a river ran through the land of towering forest. Bears, moose, and herds of deer, hawks, and owls made their homes in a peaceful river valley. Geese paused on their long migration and rested on its banks. Beavers, turtles, and schools of fish swam in its clear waters. One day, a group of native people searching for a place to settle came upon a river valley. From atop the highest mountains, known as Mount Wasatch, they saw the river nestled in its valley, a silver sliver in the sun. They came down from mountains, and at the river's edge they knelt to quench their thirst with its clear water. Pebbles shone up from the bottom. "Let us settle by this river," said the chief of the native people, and he named the river Nashaway, river with a pebbled bottom. And so the Native Americans were the first to find this river, and they named it Nashaway. By the Nashaway, I'm going to see if I can do this. Maybe if I read the words and you can look at the pictures, maybe you'll enjoy that a little more. By the Nashaway, Chief Weewa's people built a village. They gathered cattails from the riverbanks to thatch their dwellings. In the forest, they set fires to clear brush from the forest floor. In those clearings, they planted corn and squash for eating. They made arrows for hunting and canoes for river travel. When the Indians hunted in the forest or caught salmon in the river, they killed only what they needed for themselves for food and clothing. They asked all the forest creatures that they killed to please forgive them. The Nashaway people saw a rhythm in their lives and in the seasons. The river, land, and forest provided all they need. And the important thing that the author mentions here is that they only killed and used what they needed. They didn't take extras that would sit around. The Nashaway had lived for generations by the clear, clean, flowing river. When one day a pale-skinned trader came with a boatload full of treasures. He brought shiny metal knives, colored beads, cooking kettles, mirrors, tools, and bolts of bright cloth. His wares seemed like magic, and the Nashaway welcomed him, traded furs, and soon a trading post was built. Who do you think came and brought all those new items? Think about that. In the many years that followed, the settlers' village and others like it grew, and the Nashaway became the Nashua. The settlers worked together to clear the land by cutting down forests, which they thought were full of danger, wilderness that they thought they would conquer. They hunted wolves, beaver, killing much more than they needed. Extra pelts were sent to England in return for goods and money. The settlers built sawmills along the river, which the Nashaway's current powered. They built dams to make the mill ponds that were used to store the water. They cut down the towering forests and floated tree trunks down the river. The logs were cut up into lumber, which was used for buildings. Now remember to be watching these illustrations as I continue reading. You'll notice some things happening. The settlers built fences for pastures, plowed the fields, planted crops. They called the land their own and told the Indians to not trespass. Hunting land disappeared as the settlers cleared the forest. Indian fishing rights vanished as the settler claimed the river. The Indians' ways were disrupted and they began to fight the settlers. The wars raged for many years, but the Indians' bows and arrows were no match against gunpowder, and so the settlers' rifles drove the Indians from the land. Through 100 years of fighting, the Nashaway was a healthy river, sometimes dammed for grist and sawmills, but still flowing wild and free. Muskrats, fish, turtles still swam from bank to bank. Deer still came to drink from the river, and owls and raccoons and beavers fed there. So, what happened to the Native Americans that were there? Do you think that was fair? Now, look at this picture. Now, I want you to remember too, boys and girls, that in this book, as I continue to read, that the pictures are all taken from the same place. So I want you to think about what it was like back at the very beginning and look at how this picture has changed to date. Does it look the same? It is the same land. At the start of the new century, an industrial revolution came to Nashaway's banks and rivers. Many new machines were invented. Some spun thread from wool and cotton. Others wove thread into cloth. Some machines turned wood to pulp, and others made the pulp into paper. Leftover pulp was dyed and fiber was dumped into the river. whose swiftly flowing current washed away the waste. So the waste that's coming from the buildings and from the production of things is getting dumped into the river. What do you think is going to happen to that river? There were times of much excitement, times of progress, invention. Factories along the Nashua made new things of new materials. Telephones and radios and other things were made of plastics. Chemicals and plastic waste were also dumped into the river. Soon, Nashua's fish and wildlife grew sick from this pollution. This picture always makes me sad whenever I read this story. The paper mills continued to pollute Nashua's waters. For many decades, pulp was dumped into Nashua, and as the pulp clogged up the river, it began to run more slowly. As the pulp decomposed, bad smells welled up from the river. People who lived near the river smelled its stench and stayed far away from it. Each day as the mills dyed the paper red, green, blue, and yellow, Nashua ran whatever color the paper was dyed. Soon, no fish lived in the river, no birds stopped on their migration, no one could see the pebbles shining up through the murky waters. The Nashua was dark and dirty. The Nashua was slowly dying. So every day the paper mill dyed a certain color, the waste went into the river and the river would change that color. Today it happens to be they were dyeing red materials. And if you were a good listener, you notice that the fish are dying, that the river is running really slow right now, and it's stinky. One night, Owina, a descendant of the Wiwa who still lived by the Nashua, had a dream so vivid that he awoke in this wide-eyed wonder. In his dream, Chief Wiwa's spirit returned to the river and saw as it was now, still and deadly. Chief Wiwa mourned for the Nashua, but where his tears fell upon the dirty waters, the waters were cleansed until the river once again flowed freely. The next morning, Owina went to speak to his friend, Marion. When he told her of his dream, she said, "I had this dream also. The river with the pebbled bottoms is the name Wiwa gave it, but today no pebbles shine up through the Nashua's river waters." Together they decided something needed to happen. Marion traveled to each town along the Nashua. She spoke to the river's history and to her vision to restore it. No longer do we have a river. It's stinking, it's smelling like a sewer. But it wasn't always this way. People listened and imagined a sparkling river full of fish. They imagined pebbles shining through the clear waters. They signed petitions and sent letters. They protested to their politicians and they showed them the jars of the dirty water. They convinced the paper mills to build a plant to process the waste. They persuaded the factories to stop dumping. Finally, new laws were passed and the factories stopped polluting. So if the factories aren't polluting anymore, what do you think is going to happen to the river now? Slowly, the Nashua's current began to clean its water. Year by year, the river carried away dyes and fibers to the ocean. Marion and Owina thanked the people who had helped clean the Nashua. Through the meadows, towns, and cities, the Nashua once again flows freely. Paper pulp no longer clogs it. Chemicals no longer foul it. Now we walk along its banks and row upon its favorite waters. We can set our boats upon it with its current, drift downstream. Now remember, this is the same river that was all yucky and smelly. And because people stopped polluting it, look what's happening to it now. Think about how powerful that is, boys and girls. This is one of my favorite pictures. Once again, the river runs wild through a towering forest greenaway. Red-tailed hawks and barred owls live there. Geese pause for their long migration and rest on the riverbanks. Deer come to drink from the river's waters. We too have settled by this river. Petals shine up through the clear water. The Nashua is what we call it. River with the pebbled bottom. So people affected the river so greatly that it became gross, dirty, smelly. Fish died. But people also were able to change it back again to its natural state, where it's clean and the animals are coming back and you can use it again to have some enjoyment. The end. I want you to think about, what is the author's purpose in this book? What do you think it is? Was it to persuade us? Was it to inform us? Was it to entertain us? And can sometimes a book do both? I know you guys really like stories, whether they're fiction or nonfiction. And so I think for a lot of you, you're going to say, well, I was entertained, I liked it. But did this story do anything else? Did the author do anything else for you? Stop and think about that. So when you do your writing today, I want you to think about, did he persuade, she persuade, inform, or entertain? And maybe think of some reasons why. I hope you enjoyed my story. I want you guys to know that I know this isn't easy. And remember, no matter what, Mrs. Boffman loves you. I miss you. I'm here for you. Have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.